It is early December. You know what that means? That means the new balance report of Aligalek is available. Basically, Aligalek keeps track of all of the tournament games that are being played in StarCraft 2, and then it generates a balance report. Now, as per usual, you gotta make sure you take all of this with a grain of salt. The new patch is now about maybe 2.5 months old or so. Maybe more than that, I'm not sure. Time in StarCraft 2 works funny. But there have been periods in StarCraft 2's history where, for example, I believe this was the double Stargate Void Ray meta over here, where at the pro level, apparently Protoss was winning 60% of the time against Zerg. Not ideal. We also had this way back in the early days of StarCraft 2 in 2010, where Terran apparently was winning 67% of their TVZs. This was the 5-Rex Reaper meta, if you are a boomer like myself and you remember that. Anyway, let's see where we are currently at, shall we? Actually, you know what? I'm just going to look at this, even though it's going to be kind of hard to read. So last month, Protoss versus Terran was 51% win rate for Protoss, meaning that Protoss is winning ever so slightly more than half. This month, it was 54% in favor of Protoss. Kind of interesting, right? So in September, it was at 58. That was, I think, mostly the old version of the StarCraft 2 balance patch. And then last month, everybody was like, yo, this is really exciting stuff because now Terran is winning about half of the games. Now we're apparently back up to about 55% win rate in favor of Protoss in the matchup. Not ideal, I will say. Not great. But also not quite the end of the world. Problem is, you gotta always take a lot of these stats with a grain of salt. This is very dependent on, like, a few players. Like, say, for example, if Clem is sleep-deprived and he doesn't play well for, like, 2 weeks, he is a very significant part of this statistic. And obviously, well, main and premier tournament results may be a little bit more important. I'll try and see if I can zoom in more, but I don't know if it's going to work. Is this more readable? Ah, I guess it is more readable, yeah. All right, so August 2025, Terran was winning 61% of the games in Terran versus Zerg. September, 58% of the time. That's pretty terrible. Then the new patch kicked in. Now, what exactly changed? It was mostly the Baneling buff with 5 additional HP. Mostly the Mutalisks with their, like, Spire improvement and all the little bits and pieces here and there. It has then stabilized to Terran winning 52% of the time in, or 53% of the time in October. And then apparently it went a little bit further in the right direction to 52.5% in November. So that means that TVZ is mostly 50-50. Mostly 50-50 is what you're aiming for. You would obviously like to see both races being, yeah, equally able to win games at the professional level. And then we have the last matchup, Protoss versus Zerg. Now, Protoss versus Zerg also had a little bit of a weird time period. It's gone through loads of different iterations, right? Because this was like I think this must have been the double Stargate Void Ray meta that I thought was absolutely atrocious. We had all of these weird moments here too. And then currently, apparently, Protoss is winning about 54.5% of the time in PvZ. So, long story short, Protoss wins Protoss versus Terran, as well as Protoss versus Zerg. Zerg loses Protoss versus Zerg, as well as Zerg versus Terran. Terran loses Terran versus Protoss, but wins Terran versus Zerg. All of it is relatively small margins. But I do think this is about the best statistics we can really have a look at. Now, one important thing to note is that if we go to the very highest ranked players on this website, most notably Mr. Cyril, Cyril doesn't play in anything. I don't know what he's doing. Maybe he's practicing. I'm sure he's playing some, but he's not really playing in a lot of tournaments. So his last tournament games right now were back in October. He did not play a single tournament match in November. So you gotta take all of the stats with a grain of salt, because how representative is the TVZ reward, or the TVZ percentage here, if you do not have the #1 Zerg participating in anything? right? And it's the same for Protoss versus Zerg as well. How representative is this statistic? Hard to say. Serral in general is a little bit, like he doesn't play in much in general. If you compare it to the likes of, for example, like the other top dogs here, right? Like say, for example, the Clems of this world, the Heroes of this world, Max Specs. Like these guys are playing a lot. So you gotta always take everything here with a grain of salt. Maru doesn't play that much. Maru doesn't play in a whole lot of events in general. Very similar to Serral. Both of these guys, you know, part of the exclusive club in StarCraft 2 where you have to earn over $1 million in prize money. I think Serral actually currently is sitting at like 1.6, 1.7-ish? Oh no, it's even higher than that. 1.8. Yeah, it's actually interesting. So Serral's matches played offline is at 30%. So that means that out of all the games that Serral has ever played in a tournament, 30% of them are on location, like at an offline venue. If we compare that to, say, for example, Clem. I mean, Clem plays in basically every online cup available. It's 6.4%. Isn't that nuts? So, yeah, it is always a little bit tricky. Drawing any real conclusions from balance reports is, yeah, basically impossible. This is Max Specs right over here. 0% of games played offline. I always find that kind of funny. Anyway, so this is where we're currently at. Now, as far as like the actual balance for the actual matchups go, right? So let's talk Protoss versus Terran. Has anything significant really shifted in Protoss versus Terran this month compared to last month? I find it interesting because when the patch first came out, so this must have been about September, Terrans were really struggling against Storm, right? Like the Storm duration lasted longer, and then it dealt less damage, you know, at least per second, but then they kind of had to like figure out how to like deal with the new Psy Storm. The main thing I suppose that has changed over the last month is the map pool. I'm not exactly sure though, because over the last 2 months, Terrans have gotten way better at dealing with Storm. But now I guess they're struggling a little bit more. It could be that Terran in general right now is just a little bit more defensive. And usually the more defensive race does take a little bit longer to adjust to maps. Like being the aggressor is usually quite straightforward. Like it's not as map dependent anyways, at least not with Protoss. Like if you're aggressive, you can just warp in and, you know, map positioning is a lot of the time can be mostly negated. But I guess that's the main thing to look at here. I don't think 54.8% is problematic for PvT. But if it's another 8%, right? Is it going up to 58% again for the next month? That is certainly something to keep in mind. We've seen a lot of Terrans play a lot of 2-base all-ins lately. 2-base all-in against Protoss seems to be very strong, but it's not really the preferred playstyle for a lot of the guys. So it's the type of all-in where you bring the siege tanks and then whatever you can bring in a medevac and you pull a bunch of SCVs, go for the bunkers and all that. It seems that in like the longer games, Protoss is winning a lot. So yeah, it's a little hard to say exactly. But across the board, I think PvT is definitely Protoss' favorite. But I wonder if there's just like sometimes it happens, right? That somebody figures out a new build and then the build order kind of turns out to be the way to move forward. And then suddenly the matchup can flip entirely, especially with new maps. It can take a little while. But I will say that Terran, for all 3 races right now, seems to be the punching bag with the least variety. Thank you, sort of, for the raid. Hope you guys had a good stream. We're just going through the balance report on a League right now. All right, Protoss versus Zerg. So, October, Protoss versus Zerg was about 55.5% in favor of Protoss. Now it is 54.5% in favor of Protoss. Negligible difference. Obviously, the sample size is a reasonable number of games, but it can definitely be... Yeah, it can definitely just be like a a performance thing, right? With the players just playing slightly better with Zerg, or yeah, with Zerg across the board, so they're winning slightly more. Could also be the new patch. I'm not sure if anything really significant has changed in Protoss versus Zerg over the last month. I guess across the board, we've seen a lot more Zerg players play the... I'm calling it like the Solar-esque style. I don't even know if it's good, but we see a lot of Protoss players dying to like this. Zergs go up to like X amount of drones and then they never stop making army. That seems to be more prevalent over the last month compared to 2 months ago. But I also see a lot of Zerg players lose with that style, so I'm a little bit conflicted by it. But we do see a lot of like random mass Hydra Lingbane, a lot of like Roach Ravager or like Roach Ravager Lingbane type of attacks. It does seem to be that Zergs are avoiding late game a little bit more. But then again, I do think Zerg late game right now is much more playable than it was... Well, you can't even fit it in the graph right here. But back in August, I think late game PvZ was a little different back then. Spire buff helps a lot with that sort of stuff, but also, in general, all of the little adjustments do keep Protoss a little bit hesitant to go into the late game. I think PvZ is fine. One thing I am kind of missing, and this could be like a little bit of personal bias, but I would really like to see Microbial Shroud be part of reliable timing attacks. So what they did when they introduced the new patch in its very first iteration is give Microbial Shroud available right from the very start. And then they decided to like lock it behind a research. And I don't like it, man. Thank you very much, Vingali. Thank you for the sub. I think it's fine to make Microbial Shroud available without the Microbial Shroud research. And what that would create is like the option for Zergs to go for like a... maybe like a late mid-game / like early late-game timing attack. So you could go for like a Hydra Infestor type of push, or like a Roach Infestor type of attack, where like the Infestor is actually actively used for Microbial Shroud. Right now we really only see Microbial Shroud as like a Ultralist combo. It seems to be pretty good in Zerg versus Zerg, but obviously that's not in this graph because ZVZ is always at a perfect 50%. Same for TVT and PvP. So yeah, in that regard, I wouldn't mind having a little bit more variety for Zerg, and that might bring the results a little bit more in favor of Zerg and maybe make it a bit more 50-50, but yeah, whatever. Again, Cero isn't playing, so who knows? Well, I'm sure he's playing, he's just not playing tournaments. Yeah, but the thing about Microbial Shroud, so I've practiced with it quite a bit, I've played quite a few games with it. Even if you research Microbial Shroud, which is like 100 seconds and it's 100 minerals, 100 gas, you then also need 100 energy on the Infestor to be able to cast the freaking ability. 100 energy is a lot. It takes forever to get up to 100 energy, it seems, on an Infestor. Like on the flip side, you can as a Protoss player, you can warp in a High Templar and then energy overcharge it and immediately have Storm available within about a half second. Whereas for Zerg, you have to like research the whole thing. It feels like it hits incredibly late, and then you still have to sit around with the Infestor before you can finally use it. And then there's also the weird debacle where like, if you let your Infestor sit around for too long, it can actually get one-shot by a High Templar's feedback. Like, the Infestor is one of the few abilities, or the few units in the game, one of the few spellcasters, that can actually get one-shot by feedback. I don't know. There's very little reason to be making Microbial Shroud right now. Even though, in theory, it's a really powerful ability, it's just kind of messy. So, either reducing it to 75 energy, or, like, making the research... like no longer, or like making the upgrade no longer researchable, just give it to the Infestor right away. Or just both. Like, I honestly feel like it would be fine, and that might be a little much, but I think it probably would be okay if you just make Microbial Shroud available, and you remove the abilities research and make it 75 energy instead. I don't know. I don't think it would be a terrible idea, but that's just a little bit of personal note. Terran versus Zerg, slightly favored for Terran. I think this is fine. I'm trying to think if there's anything significant that has really changed in Terran versus Zerg over the last month. We have seen Zergs getting more comfortable, I suppose, with the Baneling buff. Baneling's getting 5 additional HP. It really does seem to be, yeah, an important part of the matchup. But I think TVZ is pretty fun. There has been a little bit more of a move to Terran sitting back. Especially from like the likes of Bjorn, from the likes of Maru, where they are sitting there and camping until they get up towards Mass Ghost again. I find the Ghost changes on the latest patch very weird as well. So a few years ago, when Ghosts were incredibly oppressive, the StarCraft community on its whole kind of like all collectively came together, complained about Ghost for like 6 months, and then Blizzard was like, okay, fine. We're making the Ghost 3 supply rather than 2. And everybody was like, yay, Reddit, we did it. Remember that? It's not that long ago. And then with the new patch, the one that they just introduced a few months ago, they reverted that change. So they reverted the change on the Ghost, made it 2 supply again, gave it 25 additional health. So it went from 100 HP to 125 HP, and they made it light armor. I don't get it. I don't get it at all. Maybe that's fine for Terran versus Protoss. But I wouldn't be surprised if over time we are going to be heading back to the turtle meta in TVZ. Some Terrans are catching on to it again, but it's basically just a gigantic buff against Zerg for the Ghost. There's like a bunch of other changes as well in the latest patch that I thought were just kind of stupid. Yeah, I guess the Baneling buff kind of was okay. You get 2 Banelings to kill Ghosts, and I get, yeah, 25 HP, and then -1 supply. It was a weird change. It was just one of the weird changes, though. Like, for example, the Siege Tank no longer being abductable. Like, who asks for that? I don't get it. It doesn't even make any sense. Ironically enough, if we actually look at the StarCraft 2 dashboard, I find this kind of funny. I mean, you can still obviously use, Blinding Cloud. But if you go to Zerg units, and then you click the, where is it? The Viper. It says over here, strong against Siege Tank. Even though they've removed the ability to abduct it when it's sieged up. I just find it kind of funny. Obviously, this is meaningless, and this little overview screen is completely, you know, it's not been updated in about 10 years. But it's just weird. Like, why was that, like, why was that changed anyways? I don't get it. Every patch that we've had over the years always has, like, some weird changes. Like, for example, that Siege Tank one. That I feel like everybody kind of looks at and we're like, okay, whatever. It's not really that important. But it's always kind of there and I don't get it. So this is the... These are the patch notes, right? So this one turned out to be big. I actually really like the Spire at the moment. I think it's okay. This one turns out to be massive. The Microbial Shroud changes... I don't know, man. I feel like both of these could be removed, and it would still not be used much, but maybe it would be used a little bit more. And maybe there might be some sort of Zerg timing attacks that are possible. I find it very interesting. Like, this one was also so big, and then they, like, removed it, right? So, this is the buff, and then these are the nerfs to Microbial Shroud. And now Microbial Shroud is still not being used. Sure, I guess, but kind of silly. This change is good. This change is good. I think the Mothership change is pretty good too. Although there are some weird moments where the Mothership almost feels unkillable. Like in a low eco Protoss versus Zerg late game, which doesn't really happen too much. But in a low eco Protoss versus Zerg late game, Mothership feels unkillable. So it used to be, you used to be able, years ago, you used to be able to neural parasite the Mothership. And then obviously for a long time after that, you could also still like abduct the Mothership with a Viper. All of that is gone now. It feels a lot less oppressive though, because of the movement speed, but then also the cost of the Spire. And like the build time of the Spire. It does make it all a little bit easier. The size storm changes. Whatever, I guess. I'm still a little conflicted by it. I'm still not entirely sure why it was necessary, but I don't absolutely hate it. Dark Templar Blink, I wouldn't be minding a 0-second delay on this. I feel like the Dark Templar Blink was always 0 seconds, and then they randomly put a delay on it because Terrans couldn't react in time. We still don't really see Dark Templar played much. The Surveillance mode, anti-F2 is okay. Yeah, I don't mind it. Purification, cooldown, reduced from, right? Stasis ward duration. I think this one is good. The stasis ward duration. I mean, I feel like 90 seconds is still an extremely long time. 170 seconds was just absurd, but 90 seconds is still... It still kind of feels like forever. But whatever, I guess. This is one of those changes that I'm talking about that I find very weird. It's the same for the Viking cost reduction. I don't know who out there was asking for a 25 mineral reduction on the Viking. Like, why? I get that they buffed the Brute Lord. But, like, Terrans are making a gajillion command centers in the late game of Terran versus Zerg anyway. Is like, having to make a dozen Vikings that are 25 minerals more expensive really that big of a deal? I guess? But there's always a few of those changes in every patch note that I'm just kind of looking at. I'm like, I don't care. I don't get it. But whatever. Drilling Claws effectiveness, right. So this is kind of nice. I quite like the dance between the Baneling and the Widowmine. I still feel like Hyperflight Rotors is not used as much as I would like it to. It's a really fun ability. So this is the movement speed buff for the Banshee. When the patch first came out, a lot of Terrans were getting this upgrade as the very first research. But now they're slowly going back again to Cloak first, it seems. So yeah, it's kind of nice though. Liberator Sight reduction, right? I haven't really noticed this coming into play. And then we have the Ghost change. Wait, this is not the full list of changes. The Ghost also got 25 additional HP. This is not the full list. Interesting. This is on the official Battle.net website. The Ghost definitely is also 125 HP. They obviously also did fix the Cyclone bug. Cyclones are still pretty strong though. Just not as oppressively strong. And just across the board, I think, yeah, it was all pretty good. Wait, they had an additional set of changes? Ah, it was the hotfix. Ah. Wait, so how in the world is this a hotfix, dude? That's why I guess there wasn't a lot of outrage. So, look, if you look at the actual... I forgot about this altogether. If you look at these changes, you would say, okay, you know, the Ghost, sure, it's 2 supply again, but it's gonna die a little bit quicker to, like, some units. Like, say, for example, the Colossus. Right? Because Colossi do bonus damage against light units. So, yeah, it's gonna be less supply, but, you know, it's also gonna be easier to kill. But then they casually made it 25... they made it 25 HP bigger. Weird. How is that a hotfix? That's a very significant balance adjustment. I think the Brute Lord speed reduction was fine. The Brute Lord bug fix really made it way better. This was logical. And they did also change... Yeah, this is what everybody was talking about. This is why, I guess, the Ghost HP buff kind of fell by the wayside. Everybody was complaining about Psystorm. Yeah. Fix the issue with the Ghost skin variation. Remember that one? This was also a bit of a meme. I guess everybody was talking about Psystorm and the Ghost skin. So in case you missed it, they nerfed the Ghost's supply count, right? So the supply of the Ghost went from 3 to 2. But it turned out that if you were running the female Ghost skin, they were still 3 supply each. I don't know why. I don't know why this game is coded in the way that it is. For some reason, apparently the female Ghost is considered a separate unit.
Hey Lowko. Hey chat. Wow, housing is the best thing ever added. Finally a house I can afford. Wanna come over?
I haven't played World of Warcraft in many years, and I'm not planning on going back now, but I have heard a lot of people say that they really enjoy the player housing, yeah. Thank you for the resub. Okay, I think that about sums it up, right? I think that is about all of the changes, yeah, that we have seen over the last month. It seems like PvT is heading in the wrong direction. PvZ and TvZ are headed in the right direction. We'll have to see if the PvT results are mostly map dependent or if the gateway style, right? The gateway man style is indeed very oppressive again. Or whether or not the top level Terrans have just been having a little bit of a trickier time. I, for example, feel like I haven't seen Bjorn win anything. Maybe it's just accidentally the games that I've been looking at, but I feel like Bjorn has lost every PvT that I've seen him play. Other than the ones where he went for like a 2-base all-in, but that was like a one-map type of thing. Hard to do that in a best of 5 3 times. Yeah. No. I don't mind the balance at the moment, though. I think it's overall pretty dang good.